So it's nice to be here with you all. Let me get my microphones a little closer. Happy Easter, everybody. So, this last month has been pretty crazy, pretty intense for most of us, and it looks like, at least here in the United States, we might be playing this game of social distancing and staying at home for the next 7 weeks or so, maybe till the end of May. But I guess we'll see. Everything seems to be changing so quickly. And so the first thing I want to do is just thank everyone for the continued donations and the support. It's really been touching my heart. I know many of you have lost your jobs and are still struggling, just to make ends meet. And so I appreciate you continuing to support the Satsang and the broadcast. So let's do this. Let's all just take a moment and just gently close our eyes and give ourselves permission to go inward. And just to press the pause button on all the latest events or the confusion or even the feeling of being cooped up inside. Sometimes we can feel a little anxious. Especially if we're living in a city and we can't go outside and go for walks. If we live in a densely populated area, or if there's just a lot of fear within our nervous system as a sign of the times. And so I encourage you, whatever you are feeling, whether it has to do with the lockdown, or whether it has to do with argument or difficulty or stress or anxiety, just to give yourself permission, just to breathe, to feel, to relax, to let go of whatever it is that you are carrying. Let us arrive here fully. And begin to notice, who is it that is awake, that is aware? Who is it that is present? And also the presence. Who is that? And I invite you to give yourself permission to unhook from your human self. To unhook from the personality, to unhook from the story. Unhook from the pain or the confusion. And just in this moment, can you give yourself permission to be nobody? By that I mean no one to defend, no one to guard. To be nobody, no one. Peaceful and free. And just to notice what that's like. Not to have any agenda, not to have any fight, any struggle. not to be engaged with confusion or thoughts. But to fully stop and arrive right here, right now. And instead of awareness being outward, at your thoughts or at the world, I invite you to direct awareness inward. You may notice feelings and sensations, but deeper than that, can you notice that which is aware, that which is awake, that which is alive and divine? Can you notice this? Just breathe, feel, relax. What is it that's right here, right now? That is awake, aware, alive, and dare I say, holy. Jesus and the Buddha are not the only holy ones. You and I are children of the Most High. So can you give yourself permission to wake up to your holiness, to experience your divinity? Just breathing in, breathing out, even smiling a little bit. It is very difficult to find your holiness if you're fighting with your human self, or if you're fighting with someone else. It's difficult to step into your holiness if you struggle with anxiety. Can you put whatever it is down? And just join me in this present moment, fresh, awake, alive. Despite the pandemic, despite the craziness of this world. Will you join me in this space of peace, this space of love? And just be here. Fresh, awake, alive. Not replaying the past or grasping at the future. But just noticing this quiet radiance and love. This peace, this spaciousness, this gentle beauty within us and all around us. And so with that, you're welcome just to gently open your eyes if you like. But I encourage you to stay with your experience. Stay with your experience. And so forgive me, everyone, if I started the broadcast a little frazzled. There's two ways that people meet live. One is Zoom and the other is Facebook. And the last 3 weeks, Facebook has changed their live stream platform, and so it's caused me to be a little bit discombobulated. So forgive me for that. If you see me pressing buttons or looking a little confused. And so I have a number of questions today, but what I'm really interested in is how you all are doing. And so if there's anyone here on Zoom who has a question, please bring it forward. If there's anyone on Facebook who has a question, you can bring that forward as well. Adrian in New York City, I've been praying for you because I know you're at the epicenter here, so drop me a little line and let me know how you're doing. If you're healthy and well, or if if you got this virus that's been going around the world. I'll continue to pray for you, my friend. Okay, so there's a couple questions that I can get to here. And so let's see what pops up here. The first question I have is, it's an incredibly deep question. It's something that I actually struggled with for many years. And my friend Wes, he wrote this, that basically he's wondering how to relate to a community that he took a little bit of space from. He's wondering how to relate to when he sees a spiritual teacher act in a way that is unethical or outdated, to use one term. And, it's a confusing thing when you see a teacher who you really love and admire, and they show you their human self. Their human self. And one of the things that we must remember here on the spiritual path is there's the teacher, the human being, the human character, and then there's the teaching. A lot of the times the teaching is quite beautiful. It's quite brilliant. The teaching, in theory, is transmitted down from God, but it comes through a container. And any container will have some debris in it, will have some confusion in it. And I don't care if it's the greatest guru on planet Earth, or myself, or, your middle school math teacher. Whoever it is, there's the teaching. Like your math teacher has the teaching that he or she learned, that they learned. But then there's the container, and your middle school math teacher may have been excellent, and it may have inspired, a sense of joy or happiness, about learning math. Anyone can be passionate and inspire passion about something. Or the teacher could have been, an old grumpy man who made you just want to scream and run out of the room with anxiety or fear. Or just may be like Mr. Hand from whatever that show was, South Park, that put everyone to sleep, who would say, okay, okay. And so every teacher is a container, and the teaching flows through that. The teaching flows through the teacher. And so we must remember that no teacher is perfect. No teacher is perfect. And that's one of the beautiful things that I really appreciated about Christ, is in the Bible they continue to show and report about his humanity. About the times he got angry, the times he had fits. He went to the temple and threw the tables. I mean, that, the Buddha would say that was not, appropriate use of skillful means. The Buddha probably could have done it differently, would have done it differently. There's the times when Christ was in the Garden of Gethsemane and he fell on his knees and said, Father, why have you abandoned me? Why have you forsaken me? Can you take this cup from me? This burden from me? So he's showing us his humanity. And so one of the things that we have to be careful is that in ancient spirituality, there was a lot of puritanical worldviews and a lot of myths that made us, that tainted our spirituality in this way. We developed this idea that spiritual teachers or prophets or whoever they are, great saints, are supposed to be perfect. And again, this idea of perfection is our problem. It's the student's problem. If the teacher acts like they are perfect, that's their problem. But if a student is projecting perfection on or demanding perfection onto a teacher, that's our problem. So that being said, we want to take that down a notch. And I want you to imagine, you want your teacher to be, between 75 and, let's say, 90% pretty good. Just like a parent, you want them to be 75 to 90% pretty good. No parent is going to be perfect. No teacher is going to be perfect. But there's some big no-nos too. And so if you see a teacher do a big no-no, you're welcome to speak to them. You're welcome to send them an email. You're welcome to send me an email. People do send me emails. People send me nasty YouTube comments all the time, but I appreciate a well thought out email too. I was at a conference once, and I was speaking to two of my colleagues who were women, and I called them girls, and boy, did someone tear me up about that. Actually, a couple people did. And from one sense, they're right. I needed to adjust my language. I didn't want to call my colleagues girls. But from a different perspective, if they knew who I am, they knew that I hang out with a 5-year-old. They know that when I hang out with my friend Rick Archer, I call us boys. And so Rick was in the room, and then my other colleagues were in the room, and we were all great friends. And I called the girls, the ladies, girls, and I called the boys. But no one cared if I called someone a boy, but they did care if I called someone a girl. Girls, they thought I was being condescending. And so again, this is a place where I can grow and adjust my language. It's appropriate. It's appropriate to grow and change. I mean, our world is always growing and changing. If we look at this idea or this experience of being transgender, this is something that has come into our consciousness. And so a lot of people are changing. They're growing, they're transforming, inside and outside. And our language has to adapt. It has to adapt. And so there's all kinds of language that I've used in the past that I've had to adapt. And so your teacher, whoever your teacher is, they may say something and that language may have to adapt. Now that's normal. It's normal to ask them to adapt, and eventually hopefully they will. They'll get with have a more progressive and enlightened language. But if the teacher does something, that's outrageous, then I encourage you to speak up, to speak to the other members of the community, and or leave. But it's through giving your teacher feedback, through giving other members of the community feedback, that we can grow as a Sangha. We can grow together. And I was thinking about Jesus today and his Sangha. I mean, his Sangha, Jesus was such a revolutionary. He was such a cutting-edge individual. One member of the Sangha turned their back on him. Judas turned him in. And he ended up dying because he was such a revolutionary. They nailed the poor fellow to a cross. But, he showed us with his light, with his example, that he was greater than human, greater than his human form. And this is what we want in a teacher, is we want the teacher to transmit a sense of love, a sense of freedom, a sense of deathlessness. Only a great teacher can do this. And so we cannot expect it, of every single teacher, for them to be, at that 90 or 95% mark. We can't expect every teacher to be a saint. But we can expect them to have boundaries, to have ethics, to be good people. I know many teachers who are great teachers, but they're not good people. And that really breaks my heart. I know too many spiritual teachers, and it's unfortunate when I hear these stories and I see these behaviors. Just like it's unfortunate when I see myself put my foot in my mouth or make a fool of myself. It's unfortunate for myself, and it breaks my heart, and I have to apologize. But see, you want your teacher to have a sense of humility. and a willingness to grow. And so none of them will be perfect. And so, getting back to his question, so many people I've worked with, they were wronged by a teacher or by a community, and then they left God. They left the community. So they either abandoned God, they abandoned the community, they abandoned the teacher. And it may be appropriate to abandon the teacher. It may be appropriate to leave a community. But I'll say this, it's never appropriate to leave God. Because God is your very presence. God is the soft voice of your heart. God is the light that's pouring out of your eyes. And so if you have been hurt by life, acknowledge that you are hurt by another human being. That's what happened. And let this invite you to deepen in faith, deepen in trust, deepen in love, despite what this human did. And again, it may be appropriate to leave. That's up to you. But normally, like oftentimes, when I've worked with someone who's lived in a community, I look at it in a real similar way as a divorce, You don't just come to me once and you say you're getting a divorce and we say, okay, let's get a divorce. We speak about that for, 3, 4, 5 sessions. Make sure you're crystal clear here. Investigate your part. Investigate their part. Sometimes we demand a teacher is too perfect and they can't live up to that. That's a good thing that no teacher can live up to it. Because if someone could live up to perfection and then we could not, boy, wouldn't that be a shame? We'd always be striving to be something that we can't be, in an outward sense. But in an inner sense, we are all perfect. We are all absolutely divine. We are all holy in our essence. But our outward form is always a couple steps behind, to say the least. And so anyways, I hope that was helpful. I know it was a great question and something I struggled with, not with my main teacher, David or Adyashanti, but I've been around the block and I studied with a bunch of teachers for short periods of time, and I saw some stuff that was unsavory, to say the least. And so what I did was I took the teaching, I received the transmission, if there was one. I took to heart what was good. And then, I put all the other stuff just to the side. I said, I'm going to do business elsewhere. And fortunately, I had such a great teacher, I didn't have to worry about it too much. Okay, so here's my second question I have today. Okay, here's a question from Kate about kundalini. Why does kundalini only illuminate the garbage? Before awakening, I could feel God in every face, every flower, always seeing the light in everything, no matter what it was. Now it seems like my mind, even if I am aware that it's doing this, can only see and experience the dark, the negative, fearful side of even the most positive things. What is this all about? And will it transmute? My heart is so innocent and only wants to serve. Yeah, this is a great question. So the kundalini doesn't only illuminate the garbage, but what kundalini does sometimes, what God does sometimes, what grace does sometimes, fierce grace, is sometimes God shines the light on one particular aspect of your human self so that it may be transmuted. And so if someone has anger or alcoholism, or in this case, anxiety or fear or negativity, the kundalini will zero in on that. It can zero in on that. And it will bring it to the light again and again and again until it's burnt up. It's doing it to heal it. To heal it. But there's something here, Kate, within this question, because you bring this question forth time and time again. And so there seems to be a disconnect here. And so it's important for you to step back, to step really far back. And instead of thinking the kundalini is doing something to you that is difficult, that is painful, that is uncomfortable, can you step back even further, beyond feeling, and see that maybe God is not illuminating the garbage. Maybe God is trying to heal you. Maybe God is trying to burn out insecurity. Maybe God is trying to make you strong. So sometimes God will, in a real sense, just burden us with fear, or like in my case, it was physical pain. And when we are burdened with physical pain, or difficulty, stress of any type, something that we cannot beat with our mind, something we cannot be just aloof from or transcend. Oftentimes God is trying to show us how strong we are. How strong we are. And so say, for example, with your question, why does kundalini only illuminate the garbage? There in your question, this word garbage. So a holy one, a goddess, she doesn't look inside and see garbage. If there's pain there, she meets it with love. With love. With love. And so you said before the awakening, I could feel God in every face, every flower, always seeing light no matter what it was. How about in pain, Kate? Perhaps that's what the kundalini is wanting from you, is for you to be able to see light in pain, for you to have unconditional love when the anxiety is arising. Like I have this this neighbor, you can probably hear him. He's this gigantic dog, I can't remember what kind of dog he is, but he's like the biggest dog you can ever have. His head is like this big. His head is bigger than, you could put two of my little dogs together and it still wouldn't be as big as this dog's head. And he barks in the background, and when I first met him, he didn't like me. Now, he doesn't like any man, and he especially doesn't like men who wear hats and sunglasses. And if I'm outside, and, it's sunny here in Colorado, and so I always wear a hat, and I always wear sunglasses, and so he charges at me, and he's one of these dogs that has lots of slobber hanging down all over his face, and so he charges at me and wants to eat me up. And the first time I saw him, I'll admit I was scared. He's a big dog and he was coming after me. And what my wife showed me is the dog's name is Mooji, which is a really sweet name. And my wife was so sweet to him. She walks right up to him and starts petting him. And she talks to him with a soft voice. Now me, I was using my man voice, stop, back away, get out of here, get out of my yard, as he's coming at me because I didn't want to get bit. But my wife showed me. She said, why don't you try being really sweet to the dog? And I said, well, he looks like he wants to tear my hand off, the way he comes at me. And even the neighbor warned me. She said, he doesn't like men. So I said, okay, but my wife just kept saying, try to be sweet to him. Try to be sweet. And so he'd come at me, and then I'd reach out my hand, You know, and I pet him behind the ears, scratch his neck, you know, and then he'd wipe his slobber all over my pants, you know, and the slobber would be like this big, you know. He's, like I said, he's this giant dog. And so now, you know, me and him, we have a much better understanding. And he'll still bark at me, but I'll say, Mozzie, it's me. It's me. And then he'll look at me with his silly eyes, you know, and he'll kind of smile at me. And then he'll come at me, and now I kind of hold him at a distance so I don't get the slobber all over me. But I hold him at a distance, and I talk sweetly to him and kindly to him. You know, and he'll still come and try to knock me over, you know, just because he's so big and so innocent. And see, my wife taught me to do it a different way, not to see the dog as garbage, not to see the dog as bad, not to see the dog as taking my hand off, but to see him as this gigantic bundle of love with a big bark, which is what Mozzie is, a giant bundle of love with a big bark. And you know, I'm not going to sneak up on him because he might take my hand off. But if he comes over to my house, you know, I'll pet him, I'll say hi, I'll smile at him, I'll walk him back home. Which is different. It's a change of attitude. It's a transmutation, to use your word, Kate. And so what the Kundalini is inviting you to do is to transmute this word garbage. This idea that there's anything bad, this idea that the Kundalini is doing something wrong. And listen, I know that Kundalini can be intense. I know spiritual energies can be intense. But when energies are intense, what God is inviting for you is for you to become greater, for you to become bigger. Oftentimes what humans do is we do the opposite. When energies become intense, we become small and we align with being a victim. When energies become intense, whether it's inward, like Kundalini, or outward, like, you know, someone's giving you a hard time, God's inviting you to be the bigger one. So when Mozzie came at me the first time, I aligned with my ego. And I yelled at him. I became smaller, and that didn't work. My wife showed me that I could become bigger and have unconditional love to this dog that I was terrified of. Unconditional love. And I can help Mozzie melt his I'll use this word, his bias towards men, towards men with hats and sunglasses. I can help him melt, his bias through loving him, through being kind to him, through showing him something different. You know, I have no idea why he doesn't like men, but I can help him melt that, and I can also melt my fear of big dogs. I normally don't have fear of many things, but you know, if it's a real life thing, like a big dog who's coming at you and the owner says he doesn't like men, watch out. But see, there's another way, and this is what God was teaching me, and this is what God's wanting to teach you. God's wanting to teach you that there is another way to respond to this overwhelming energy. Can you soften? Can you open? Why does Kundalini only illuminate? I want you to put a period at the end of that sentence, Kate. And acknowledge Kundalini only illuminates. It is a force of illumination. To say it only illuminates the garbage, that doesn't make sense. A light illuminates everything. But if you turn on a light and you're in a room and the room is full, to use your word, of garbage, but I'll use a different word. If if our room, if our house, if our psyche is full of, say, insecurity or pain or sadness or grief, the Kundalini is bringing this to your attention so that you may learn unconditional love. It's not doing this to punish you. It's not doing this to make you suffer. It's doing this because Kundalini has one goal, which is to heal and to transform. And so I encourage you to continue to sit with this. To sit with this. If you're seeing darkness, negativity, and fearful side of even the most positive things, that's saying something, that there's something here within you that needs more love. More love. And there's a lot of people on this path who get frustrated with the process. And listen, I don't want you to hear my words, Kate, and think that, I'm saying you should have had this figured out from the beginning. I had the same question you had for many years. I was frustrated with the process of transformation, especially the physical transformation, for many years. It brought me to my knees. I literally would curl up in the fetal position every day for years and cry like a little child because I was in so much pain through the transformation process. That's what my dark night of the soul was like. But I never gave up on God. I had faith and I had trust that this pain was somehow transforming me. It was helping me to surrender. It was helping me to let go. It was helping me to soften. It was showing me that I was holding on too tightly. It was showing me, basically that one thing, where you're holding on too tightly. And so if we have something within us that's fearful, it's important that we look at this fear deeply and say, what is this fear about? What is it about? Why does it keep coming forward? What am I missing here? Perhaps I need to do some shadow work around my inner child. Some people get stuck in the cycle of ignoring the inner child, and other people get stuck in the cycle of they go into the inner child and then they become like the hysterical child who can't calm down. And if we get in that, that loop of mind, if we look at any child that can't calm down, they need help soothing, self-soothing. And my sense is that's what this is about, is you need greater support, self-soothing. Because for some reason your body is not getting that. Your mind's not getting it. Your emotional nature's not getting that. So that's a great question, by the way. Okay, here's a question from Taylor. Craig, I was wondering about the relationship between waking up at the soul level and waking up to true nature. Does Kundalini wake up both? Yeah, Taylor, I'm not sure that I would distinguish waking up at the soul level from waking up to true nature. Let me see if I can feel into that a little bit. So one distinction I could make, but I normally would not, but I could make, is that waking up to true nature can happen like this, just right here, right now, in this present moment. Waking up to our soul on a soul level means you wake up, especially deep in the belly, and you wake up beyond lifetime. And so you can wake up right now to true nature, but you can not know the depth and the timelessness of your soul. You would get a sense of it, but you might not go as deep as what I think you're getting at in your question. Let me see if I can be a little bit more clear about that. Again, if I was going to make a distinction, When we wake up on the level of soul, it comes with a sense of fearlessness, because in your soul you know that you've lived at least 100 different incarnations. And so there's a fearlessness with coming with that. Whereas a lot of people can wake up to their true nature, but can still have a lot of fear in their body. I see it all the time. You can get a glimpse of true nature, but not know that you are a bazillion years old or beyond time. So, and again, I'm splitting hairs here. Does Kundalini wake up both? So I would speak about this a little bit differently, Taylor. What Kundalini does is it wakes up the physical, energetic body, and Kundalini is the most grounded, earthly manifest awakening possible. So you can have a transcendent awakening, which I think we can all get a sense of that. Is its vast, spacious emptiness and freedom. Normally, Buddha would be a good example of that. His teachings are normally thought of as transcendent. There's the heart awakening, where you feel oneness and intimacy and overwhelming love with all of life. If anyone's ever seen the great Saint Amma, it's like she just transmits love, just unconditional, radiant, soft, warm, motherly love. So there's that type of awakening. And then there's Hara awakening, which is more on a soul level. It's timeless, it's deathless, it's fearless. It transforms fear. So those are 3 types of awakening. So in theory, Kundalini will take you through 1, 2, 3, and then it will bring you into this 4th. It'll be a physical, energetic awakening, where you'll feel the cells of your body waking up, the 7 chakra centers waking up. It feels as if you have this barreling freight train or river moving through your consciousness. And it will illuminate the 7 minds, which can be 7 versions of an awakened mind. So, and I'll just say one caveat here before I move on. That's if it's a true Kundalini awakening. Some people have Kundalini experiences, which, they may have a rush of energy up their spine and 7 chakras may illuminate. And they may stay awake for a second, a day, a week, a month, a year. But if they don't stay awake, if the process isn't really full and complete, then it just becomes a Kundalini experience or activation that comes and goes. Not sure if that was helpful, Taylor. Here's a question from Brett. Craig, I keep looking for a romantic partner, but all I meet are people who don't want to or care to be intimate with me in the way I need. Will I ever meet this person? Is this a love I have to find within myself? Brett, that is a great question. More often than not, if we want to meet our true soulmate, our twin flame, I don't think I've ever said that word twin flame before, but if we want to meet, I'd like to say our partner in crime, but I'll say it differently, our partner in holiness. Someone who can truly meet us and love us at every level of our being. We have to first meet ourselves and love ourselves in every level of our being first and foremost. Life does this funny thing. Life will mirror our inner sense, our inner relationship with ourselves in an outward way. So I'll give you an example here. If I hate myself intensely, if I have a strong internal critic, if I am a deeply skeptical being, if I'm the Grinch, there's a good chance I'm going to transmit, like a radio transmit, the Grinch energy. And I'm going to meet some other grumpy old person. And we're going to be 2 Grinches living together. But if I deeply and overwhelmingly love myself in every aspect of my being, my wound, my shadow, my divinity, my holiness, my inner child, If I love myself fully and completely, there's a good chance I'm going to meet someone who loves me fully and completely, who loves himself fully and completely. You know, I've had this funny experience in life. I'll just say something a little silly. Let me see if I could say this in an appropriate way, but without being offensive. I've always had this thing against, like, corporate people, people who wear suits. And it's not that I don't like them. It's more that I was just always kind of a rebel just growing up, and, just looked at life and thought it was such a dream that I didn't want to wear a suit and be in that dynamic. I think my father wanted me to be one of those guys, and I would have a hard time just putting on a suit and sitting down at that table or going to those luncheons or those bars or those work parties with, say, the suits, the guys wearing suits. That's not me. It's not my group. I don't transmit that energy. I have a hard time tucking my shirt in and keeping it tucked in. I'm more the kind of guy who wears a hoodie. And if I look at my friends, all my friends wear hoodies. Like, we transmit kind of a casual, carefree, mountain man kind of energy. Yoga, go with the flow, meditation, spiritual kind of guy, kind of energy. I don't fit in with bankers and, lawyers and doctors and this type of thing, CEOs. Now, sometimes they come and meet with me, and I'm happy to meet with those folks, and I have absolute love and connection with them. But it's going to be hard for me to work in that environment. It's going to be hard for me because it's not my nature. My nature is something else. And so what my nature transmits, those type of people tend to show up in my house, in my life, in my world. And so the same is true when we're looking for a lover, you have to look at what are you transmitting. And before you can just say, I'm going to transmit unconditional love and then someone's going to unconditionally love me, we need to transmit unconditional love to ourselves. We can't fake a transmission, if that makes sense. It's like with me, if I had to put on a suit and go and sit with all the bankers or the corporate guys and go to the corporate meeting, pretty soon they'd find me out. They'd say, "Hey, Craig, you're not really one of us. You're different. There's something weird with you. You don't seem like you fit in with this group." And it's not that they would think I was bad and I would think they were bad. It's just, they would say, "Hey, like, the last time, I wore a suit was at my dad's funeral, and I think the time before that was at my older brother's wedding." And so it's not my nature. I don't transmit that energy. I don't have that type of formality. And the same is true with, having a partner, a lover, is we want to look inside and say, do I fully love myself deeply and completely? And when you do, you tend to respect yourself. And so then you demand that in a partner. You demand that a respectable person shows up. If you're kind to yourself, you tend to attract a kind partner. Now, there are some people who, to make it a little bit more confusing, they love themselves deeply, but they also have a wound around mom or dad. And I'll use myself as an example. With my first marriage, I had a wound around my father. My father was a pretty harsh guy. And so then I attracted someone who was harsh to me, who didn't value me. And I was trying to heal that. I was trying to heal that wound by finding someone else who had the same wound that my father had, and I thought if I could love them to death, it would heal this wound within me. So many people make this mistake on the path. But we can't find someone and like work it out in a relationship dynamic. We have to work it out within ourselves first. We have to. The funny thing is when we heal our wounds on the inside, they tend to not show up on the outside. Or at least not nearly as much. Not nearly as much. And so I could probably go on and on about relationship questions. But you know, it's a beautiful question. All of us want to connect deeply with a partner here on planet Earth. Whether our partner is God and we're living as a monk or a nun, as a renunciate, or we want to connect with God and another human being. And have a family. Like human beings are relationshipal creatures. And so it's beautiful, you know, to look at this and say, what's going on in my outward relationships? Why am I attracting Mr. or Mrs. or the wrong person? Why am I attracting the wrong one? What's going on? You know, for a while I saw like 3 or 4 people in a row, and they all had the same kind of psyche, same kind of makeup. And that made me stop and realize, oh, what am I doing here? Because I'm the, what's it called? The common denominator. You know, the other 4 or 5 people came and went, but I'm the common denominator. You know, why is it that I'm attracting the same thing? Maybe I need to stop and slow down and just spend some time focusing on myself. Focusing on myself and healing my wounds. It's a worthy endeavor. The most loving thing you can do is to be with yourself fully. The most loving thing you can do is to look in the mirror and say, who's here that needs love? Who's here that needs support? And if there's not a gaping wound there, there's always the question of who's here that's holy? Who's here that's divine? And can you fall in love with yourself? Fall in love with yourself. So many people think that sounds, you know, really arrogant. It's the most compassionate thing you can do is literally in your life is to fall in love with yourself. There's this funny thing that happens is when you dedicate yourself to you loving you, you discovering your inner child, you discovering your innocence, your goodness, your divinity, your compassion. When you discover your holiness, it starts to pour forth out of you. Pour forth. And I always get these 2 mixed up because they said such similar things. But Jesus or the Buddha, I can't remember who, said, you know, basically if you're going to be a caregiver, you want to have a cup that's overflowing. So if you're going to do anything good on planet Earth, you have to have a cup that's overflowing. If you fall in love with your heart will be overflowing. Overflowing. But if you don't love your heart, if you're silently judging yourself, attacking yourself, or a common one that I see a lot of people is they have no idea what their heart is. And boy, does that feel tragic to me. When I ask them what's in their heart, and they say, they look up here and they say, I don't know. I say, that's not where your heart is. Your heart is not up here in your head. It's not in the transcendent space. Your heart is right here. What is in your heart? And unfortunately, you know, the way we are wired is our deep, true spiritual heart, which is absolutely perfect, absolutely just as beautiful as the day you were born. Our deep, pure spiritual heart is underneath our emotional heart. And by that I mean our emotional heart is on our surface. It's on our chest. That's why when people get anxious, all the muscles in their chest get kind of tight. Their shoulders get tight. It's on the surface, the emotional nature. And so when I ask people to tell me what's in their heart, normally the first thing they do is they notice emotional pain. And they unconsciously, ouch, I don't like that. I'm going to try to transcend or ignore or not feel or not go there or distract or avoid the question. And so the way God helps us to wake up, one of the ways, is through putting our spiritual heart deep within us, so that we have to walk through the doorway of pain first, so that we can become courageous, so that we can develop a sense of faith, so that we can begin to trust. This makes us strong, and we need this strength on planet Earth. We can't just be awakened bunny rabbits who are terrified. We have to be strong. We have to be strong. And when you look at your heart and you're forced to face your emotional pain, this is the very doorway that helps you develop strength. And strength is what's needed to root and to ground your divine nature. If you want to be awake in an abiding way, you must know about strength. We've all been to yoga class. I'm sure many of us have been to ecstatic dance or 5 rhythms or kirtan, or maybe we've been to a holy roller church, where we're all singing and clapping and praising the Lord. And if we just connect to God through our emotional center, then our awakening has no depth to it. And I'm sure you've seen people who, they get really high when they go to kirtan, but there's no depth to them. When the rubber meets the road, they're the first one to run in fear. And so the beauty of that, having your spiritual heart buried underneath your emotional heart, is it forces you to have strength, to develop strength. Okay. Here's one more question I didn't see. Let's just see. It's from Robin. How do we know if it's a kundalini experience or a true awakening? I have felt the activation and the experience for the last few years, but it does feel like it has stabilized. However, still feel it deeply when I'm still unconnected in. Do you think meditation can help with connecting in? Absolutely. I've heard different perspectives where some have said that once kundalini awakenings, that it shouldn't matter whether we meditate. However, I feel things pushing along a lot quicker and a lot more clearing when I stop and connect in. Life can be so busy and hectic, and I feel the need this time. What are your thoughts on this? Robin, you answered the question right there. Life is busy, life is hectic, life is wild, and most great masters on the planet meditate. People who are telling you that you don't need to meditate, I find that a really unhelpful teaching. Unless you are born a living saint and all your karma is cleared, meditation is good, contemplation is good. Living a divine, holy, inwardly directed life will keep you connected. Again, I know many great masters who had an incredible awakening, and then they let go of their spiritual practice. They started messing around. They got confused by their ego and all their student projections. And then they got themselves in trouble. Next thing you know, they don't feel enlightened at all. They don't feel awake at all. They just feel deeply confused. And they're in the middle of a great scandal of some sort. And so if a great master can get confused, so can you or I. So I think a daily meditation practice is helpful. A daily yoga practice is helpful. With this coronavirus and the things slowing down, I've been committing to a daily meditation, but also a daily yoga practice. That's what I've added. And my body has been so happy to do yoga every morning. So happy, so happy. This morning, the Easter Bunny came to my house, and so I skipped my my yoga practice, and I noticed, my daughter got up at 5 a.m., and so my nervous system was a little agitated just being up so early, and I didn't sleep last night. And I noticed that I was craving the yoga. So about 8:30, after being up for 3 hours, I thought, okay, let's do some yoga. Let's do some meditation. And it just helped just to lift, some of the agitation from being up all night. My 5-year-old, she was sleeping in bed with me, and she was attached to me like a monkey, and she's a real violent sleeper, so she was kicking and pulling and punching me all night. And so, the body feels agitated, if it feels overwhelmed, if there's fear over the coronavirus or you losing your job, it's good to stop, to show up to satsang, to have a spiritual practice. I don't think any great master would disagree that spiritual practice is a good thing. So anyways, thanks for the last minute question, Robin. My heart is with all of you, truly. Truly. Let's just close our eyes for a moment and just invite that everyone in the Sangha is safe, is held, is protected, is supported financially, abundantly, in a healthy way, that we're all well fed, we have everything we need. And then let us not be selfish, and let us pray for all of humanity. Lord, will you bless us all with your light, with your love? Will you help us heal? May this pandemic pass. May we all move forward into a greater light, a greater healing as we come to the end of this. And so, may all beings be filled with light, love, happiness, and joy. Thank you all for your generous donations and your support. May peace be with you all. And have a wonderful night. Bye for now.